the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings 2021 Week 9. Waiver Wire Pickup Power Rankings, Injury Report, Monday Night Football, and a change in the segment name from Life Advice to random questions you have that are not specifically fantasy or gambling related. Anything is on the table. You can email those in at thepatmayoexperience@gmail.com. I decided to change it because I want more hilarious questions coming in, and I really love the one that was sent in today, and I can't wait to talk about it. You can always use the time codes to jump through everything. Remember to smash the like button to the episode and subscribe to Mayo Media Network. If you have never left an audio review on the Pat Mayo Experience podcast, please go do that. 5 stars, something you enjoy about the show. You can make that up for all I care. And thank you for doing that. Download all of the shows. We need all of the downloads to continue to rise in the charts. We are currently a top 10 fantasy podcast out there in the world. Well, in the United States, higher in Canada, good in Great Britain, good in Australia, and then the rest of the world, it's kind of hit or miss. Huge in Portugal. Who would have ever known? Pat Mayo Experience. But let's get into the biggest news of the day. I'm glad I waited a little bit to do this show because a lot broke on Monday morning. Probably the biggest Monday morning news reporting dump of the season. It looks like Derrick Henry is going to be out for the season with a foot injury. That is not confirmed as of yet. And apparently, this was sustained in the first quarter of the Titans-Colts game on Sunday. And then he just came back in the game and ended up with over 25 carries. Maybe there was a reason he was kind of ineffective. I'm very curious to see this. This sucks for any Henry owner and obviously for the Tennessee Titans. But we saw this a few weeks ago when Chubb and Hunt were out and Dearness Johnson went absolutely ham on the Broncos Thursday night. That the old debate of do running backs actually matter come back to the forefront now. And I don't think that the Derrick Henry is going to be a test case for who's right and who's wrong about it. I'm more on the side that running backs by and large do not matter. And not that there aren't more skilled running backs than others. There most certainly are. I would think that a dual threat pass catching running back is likely more valuable than someone like Derrick Henry, who just kind of goes in between the tackles and just bowls people over. But he is such an outlier based on what he can do. There's really no replicating him at this point in time. So maybe he's just on an outlier island by himself that he is going to be incredibly difficult to replace. We'll see this reflected in the betting odds of a lot of these games that, when Dak Prescott goes out, it moves the line almost 8 points towards the other team. When Devontae Adams goes out, it shifts the line 2.5, 3 points, which was probably way too much to begin with anyway. But that's what ended up happening. I'm curious to see where some of these Titans fall into now in terms of the spread, in terms of their division odds are pretty secure after beating the Colts in Indianapolis. That gives them technically like a 3.5 game lead in that division. So that didn't change, but their Super Bowl odds didn't change. And maybe there is a chance that Henry can return at this sometime this year. It's Derrick Henry. I wouldn't put anything past him if all of a sudden guy has a broken foot 3 weeks later. He's like, yeah, I'm Derrick Henry. I willed it back into being good. It's likely that he misses the rest of the season. Not a guarantee. As I'm speaking right now, I can always update all of this. It's just I can only work with the information that I have at the moment. If you're looking for the full injury list, by the way, that's down in the description as a part of the Mayo Media newsletter. Next Monday, Chris Meany will be joining me on this Monday show. We might even go live in case you have questions. But we're going to do our rest of the season rankings for fantasy football, like the top 100, top 150, whatever. You can almost use it as a trade guide. It's going to be completely different than the rankings coming into the season because quarterbacks will intrinsically have more value at this point in time. Wide receivers will have, probably just because of the health issues that are concerning running backs right now and the uncertainty at running back, wide receivers are going to be much higher on that list. If you're looking for trades the rest of the season, we'll have a schedule breakdown, who has the easy matchups through the fantasy playoffs. If you're looking ahead, because we know that fantasy trade deadlines are coming through. The actual NFL trade deadline is on Tuesday. So when it comes to guys like Allen Robinson or good guys that you have in really terrible spots right now that aren't doing anything, at least keep them past the trade deadline. Then, you know what, Allen Robinson, if you're not traded to a team that's going to use you properly, go ahead and cut him. That kind of thing. But I'd say wait at least until Tuesday at midnight before that goes through. Most waivers pass the next day, so you can adjust on the fly as it goes through. So what do you do with Derrick Henry now? Or if you're a Derrick Henry owner, how do you approach this? Because you lost, your best player and your best trade chip. So how do you replace that? Well, if we go to the Waiver Wire Pickups for the week, as you can see, it's all up on dknation.com right now. I have Jeremy McNichols at number 1, Carlos Hyde at number 2, J.D. McKissick, Boston Scott, Ty Johnson, Latavius Murray, Mark Ingram, Rex Burkhead, Sorny, Michelle, and Samaje Perine. A lot of those guys are handcuffs. McNichols, as of right now, I'm guessing, goes into the Derrick Henry role. He's not going to play that full-time role, but Darrynton Evans was also placed on injured reserve coming into Week 8. So really, it's just McNichols' backfield right now. There's already reports that they are working out Adrian Peterson, who I went to go pick him up in like my keeper league on Yahoo, so I could have a running back to come in, because I was like, oh, he didn't even play a game this week. He's going to be a free agent. But apparently he's still on the Lions roster per Yahoo, which sucks. And that's really the only one where you can kind of skip waivers if guys don't play. So unless they rectify that between now and the time waivers come out, you'll probably have to put in a bid if he ends up signing with the Titans. He is not signed with the Titans as I am speaking right now, but if he was free, I would add him to the roster. As a waiver pickup, if he's not signed, I mean, I can't imagine spending that much on him. I'd rather go out and spend on McNichols. At least McNichols will have a role either way in this offense moving forward, primarily as a pass catching back, but all of a sudden, if he can start doing, 4 to 6 targets and 8 to 10 carries, hell, even 5 to 8 carries, he's kind of like the better version of J.D. McKissick at that point. So that's going to have some value, more so in PPR leagues, but even in half-point PPR, and if he's going to be on the field that much, the increase of touchdown opportunity, especially without Derrick Henry, kind of goes through the roof. We don't know what's going on with Julio Jones either. They might trade, there's a bunch of guys they could trade for. They could go trade for Phillip Lindsay, or they could go trade for David Johnson. They could trade, the Eagles now have 3 running backs that people use. Go trade for Boston Scott. Who knows? Mike Davis seems like he's pretty expendable at this point. So there's a ton of guys that you could theoretically go trade for. I don't know if the Titans are going to do that. I'm guessing that their best point of action right now is to play McNichols, find a vet to bring in to spell him on the ground in between the tackles. That's how I imagine that the Titans are going to roll going forward. Hence why I have Jeremy McNichols at number 1. The Carlos Hyde thing is based a lot on what's going on with James Robinson, who Adam Schefter reported that James Robinson, his heel injury is day-to-day. It's not super serious, but that doesn't mean he can't miss a week either. Then you're plugging and playing Carlos Hyde against the Bills, which isn't a great spot, but we do know he's the next man up. J.D. McKissick continues just to get run. We can go take a look. If you're looking for the snap chart, this is the Mayo Media newsletter. You can click on the snap chart right there, as you can see it. It's a bit zoomed in for this, but if you just pull it up as we go along, the link is down in the description right now. You can see the snap shares. Najee, Khalil Herbert, because Damian Williams ended up getting injured in that game. Jonathan Taylor, Zeke, and Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon absolutely dominated the touches last week. So as you can see here, as we X out of that, go back to the newsletter itself, their overall injuries. Saquon Barkley is actually one of these good trade targets, I think, because the Giants, are they on bye next week or the week after? It's either week 10 or week 11. It's week 11 that they're on bye. So Barkley could be back next week, or they sit him out coming back. I know that's not going to help a Derrick Henry owner in the short term, but Barkley has a super easy schedule to end the season. So if he's actually healthy, once he comes back and can remain healthy, he could end up being a league winner. The underrated one that you can go trade for right now, I think, because no one really knows how to feel about him. I don't know how to feel about him, but Melvin Gordon, if you go look at the Broncos' schedule down the stretch, a bunch of bad run defenses. You kind of have to hold your breath and play Melvin Gordon, but he's been wildly effective the past 5 weeks for Denver, despite the fact that they can't score. But Denver is through the tough part of their schedule. Go look. It's a lot like the Seahawks. One of the reasons that I was on them so big to beat Jacksonville and beat the crap out of them at -3.5 at home was just go look who they had played the previous 3 weeks with Geno Smith. It was tough defense. After tough defense, it was the Rams, it was the Steelers, and it was the New Orleans Saints. Jacksonville, not quite on that tier, as it turns out. And when you go back and look at now who the Broncos have played, after starting the year with 3 cupcake games, they played 4 in a row, super tough games. Melvin Gordon has prevailed in those games as a fantasy asset. He's not going to replace Derrick Henry for you, but he's someone that I think that you can acquire on the cheap right now and continue to ride and potentially get a huge boost. And maybe you want to go and get a distressed asset in Javonte Williams instead, and hopefully in 3 weeks weeks, 4 weeks time that he can usurp Melvin Gordon as the primary back in the Denver offense. But Denver, by and large, has a very easy rest of the season schedule that you can go get these guys, presumably for a lot cheaper than like, oh, I lost Derrick Henry, I need to go trade for Alvin Kamara or Austin Eckler or Najee Harris. It's just not going to happen. So that's tough. As we go back into the newsletter right now, you can see I posted some stats. This was an update on Monday morning when all these came out. But if you look at week 8 rushes inside the 5-yard line plus targets inside the 5-yard line, I spoke about Mixon, all the work that he got. That was both through the air and on the ground against the New York Jumbo Jets. More on them in a minute. But Mixon, 5 of those combined touches. Darrell Henderson with 4. Kamara, Aaron Jones, Jordan Howard with 3. Michael Hurricane Carter at number 2. Damian Harris, Boston Scott, and Rashad Penny. If we go back over to the waiver wire pickups for the week, you can actually, that's the back end of everything. There we go. There's a much fancier version of it with nice graphics. This is on DK Nation, by the way, and down in the description if you want to go check it out. Boston Scott's an interesting one with Miles Sanders currently on injured reserve. Obviously, Jordan Howard ended up scoring a bunch of touchdowns and having 3 touches inside the 5-yard line, but Boston Scott was the primary ball handler in that game. Well, it was a game for the Philadelphia Eagles. The joke is just going to be this week that Jalen Hurts scored 10 fewer fantasy points than he had in any other game this season, and Philly posted 41+. Wouldn't expect Philly to post 41+ in many games the rest of the season, so I wouldn't be too concerned about Jalen Hurts whatsoever. Maybe buy low on him. But until Miles Sanders comes back, like Gainwell only had touches when the game was completely over and like Hurts wasn't playing anymore. So I guess if Gardner Minshew somehow gets into the game, then Kenny Gainwell, that's where you want to be. If not, it's Boston Scott, who's going to have his value sucked away by Jordan Howard. And I pointed this out on the Saturday show as well. I didn't expect them to score that many points. It didn't make a difference this week that one guy was stealing from another guy and stealing from another guy when they only post 17 points and everyone doesn't get their hand jumping into the end zone and doing a celebration. It's going to be a bit more difficult. Boston Scott would be the one I would want until Miles Sanders comes back in action for the Philadelphia Eagles. But, I mean, how good is he really going to be? Running back 28 is probably where he'll end up being ranked on a weekly basis. You can see where he ranks this week when I do the show with Sealy and actually do the rankings on Tuesday's Pat Mayo Experience. Smash the like, sub to the channel, turn on those notifications, by the way. So that's where I'm going with it. Latavius Murray, I just want to get an injury report from him because they've been using Le'Veon Bell. They reactivated Tyson Williams, obviously Devonta Freeman and Lamar all getting carries on the ground. But Latavius has been the one who's actually been good as a fantasy running back when healthy. He was dealing with that ankle injury coming out of week number 7, obviously on bye. I'm going to guess that he's okay. No, he missed week number 7. So he sustained the injury at the end of week number 6, missed week number 7, now on bye week. He should be okay, you would think. When we go back up to the injuries, we'll take a look here, just as a full scan through them. Henry possibly up for the season. Damian Williams hurt his knee again. David Montgomery obviously still on IR. To the moon for Khalil Herbert. James Robinson exited the game with the heel. Like I said, he's now day-to-day unsure of how long he is going to be out. It could be no time. It could be a few games. We'll have to wait and see for the injury reports during the week, hence why Carlos Hyde is still elevated in the running back waiver wire rankings this week. Justin Jackson hurt his quad. He left the game for the Chargers. Roundtree, I'd expect to be the primary backup to Austin Eckler. Jamal Williams missed week 8. Great. Jamar Jefferson ended up scoring a touchdown instead of DeAndre Swift. That's always fun. When it looks like a smash spot for DeAndre Swift, obviously it's not. How could it work out that way? Miles Sanders on injured reserve. Tevin Coleman can take a fucking hike, by the way. That's who the Titans should trade for, Tevin Coleman. Because I'm enjoying this Michael Carter and Ty Johnson backfield from Magic Mike White, catching all of the passes. Chris Evans missed week 8. Darrington Evans, obviously out for the season. Like I mentioned, Taysom Hill, I mean, if he gets back next week, he could start at quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. I'm curious to see what they end up doing. Josh Jacobs did not, or he exited with a chest injury in week 7, obviously on bye. You'll want to check back with him and see what is happening with the Raiders backfield. They're at the Giants this week after the Giants play on Monday night. It's a really nice spot. You can run on the Giants. You can pass on the Giants. Their defense isn't great. They're pretty good at tackling. They have a good pass rush. Doesn't seem to be helping them whatsoever, but it would be a start for Josh Jacobs, obviously. If not, Kenyon Drake, I guess. I'm liking this new look Raiders offense the past 2 weeks, ever since Gruden had to take a hike and all of a sudden, the running backs are more involved in the receiving game. People look spry. People look like they're trying harder. The offensive game plan is a bit more 2021 rather than 2003. Gotta like that stuff when you have fantasy players involved with those teams. Other news. Right now, this is why I said that it was interesting that I waited for a little bit to do this show today because a bunch of stuff came out. Von Miller traded from the Broncos to the Rams. That was breaking news as soon as I started recording this. I was like, what is going on here? How do the Rams have this much cap space? Do they have funny money cap space? I guess, I'm pretty sure Goff still counts towards their salary cap this year. Don't know how they're managing to do this, but, the league's number one defense gets better. Headline. Are the Rams going to win the Super Bowl? I don't know, but they're 7.5 to 1 to win the Super Bowl right now, and they continue to bolster this defense. They know what they have in this offense and how good it is that if they can just continue to pump up the D and make sure that they have these big name players that they can sustain a loss from some of these guys. If Aaron Donald goes down, if Von Miller goes down, if Jalen Ramsey goes down, that was always the concern about some of these quote unquote super teams when you have these elite players on defense, that what happens when one of the stars goes down because you spent all the salary cap on these guys. How good are your backups? The answer generally is not very good. But at this point, if you have so many stars, you can kind of miss one or two. Like look at the Bucs defense right now. Eventually their guys are going to get healthy and their defense is going to be super scary again. But at the time they've been able to kind of tread water, beat up on the bad, and that's what the Rams are doing right now. They're beating up the crap out of the bad teams. But when it gets to shutting down Tom Brady, when it gets down to shutting down Kyler Murray or Aaron Rodgers or whoever the hell it is shutting down the Saints offense shouldn't be that big of a problem. It's just, can you score on the Saints? That has become a bit of a bigger problem right now as their defense continues to elevate their game. Obviously, good offense is always going to be good defense in this day and age, especially indoors in the regular season. You get to January 7th outdoors and it's freezing, defense might look a little bit better than the offense does at that point. So I thought that was just kind of crazy. There was a guy on the Ravens too. I got to bring this up. Malik Harrison was shot. Ravens linebacker Malik Harrison, non-life-threatening injuries. He's in the hospital right now. He was caught by a stray bullet in the left calf while attending a gathering in Cleveland, according to the Baltimore Ravens. I thought that was kind of crazy. The other breaking news was Jameis Winston confirmed tore his ACL, even though he was dancing after the game. It does seem to be like he is going to miss the rest of the year. And as I am talking right now, Derrick Henry is going in this morning to have surgery on his foot. So maybe he doesn't miss. For fantasy purposes, he's done. For the Titans purposes, maybe he can come back for D. Hember. Maybe D. Hember has not been canceled. Maybe it just goes to January this year because it looks like the Titans are making the playoffs and having a, I guess, well-rested Derrick Henry at this point. It was some sort of metatarsal in his foot. So anyone who is out there saying oh, they shouldn't have given him so many carries, this actually had nothing to do with that. It's not like he popped a hamstring or blew out a quad. It was, having his foot stepped on that ended up derailing Derrick Henry. So it had nothing to do with an overworking of Derrick Henry in that regard. Let's go to the injuries at wide receiver for the week. Once again, you can find this entire cheat sheet down in the description, or if you subscribe to the Mayo Media newsletter. Sterling Shepard, Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney. Shepard likely in, Golladay likely out, Kadarius Toney likely in for the Monday night game. Other than that, T.Y. Hilton has already been ruled out with a concussion for Thursday Night Football against the Jets. Reagor, Mims, Gallup didn't play. Reagor and Mims both left the game for their respective teams. No word on Mims yet, not that anyone cares, for Thursday Night Football. Michael Gallup didn't play in Week 8 along with Dak in that Sunday night game. Calvin Ridley missed Week 8 with personal problems. We're not sure what it is. It's some sort of mental health issue. He is stepping away from football at the moment. We have zero timetable on his return. It could be next week. It could not be for the rest of the season. We kind of have to keep up to date on what is going on with him. I hope he's okay. It's funny that if this had happened 15 years ago, you would just see the barrage of negative comments. Not that you don't see the barrage of negative comments underneath this stuff anyway, calling guys soft and all this shit. You got mental health problems, you get that shit sorted out. And don't be afraid to take time. It's a privileged position that he has, that he plays in the NFL and makes millions of dollars. There's a lot of people who simply cannot afford to go, take time off work to treat their mental health issues. But if you have the ability to do that, your life is going to be better for it. So I really hope Calvin Ridley can get himself straightened out, get the help that he needs, and come back to the football field, because I like watching Calvin Ridley play. And if you're the type of loser who's like underneath of his statement being like, you fucked my fantasy team, you piece of shit. I mean, you're the piece of shit, obviously. You know that, though, right? You do know that. If you don't know that, I don't know how you function in society. So anyone out there, you can always listen. I know for like the wacky life advice and hilarious questions, the Pat Mayo experience at gmail.com. But people have sent me some pretty personal stuff up there over the years, and I've always tried to respond to as many people as possible. So if you have no one to talk to, you can email into me, and I check it periodically, a few times a week, more so now that I'm taking these questions. So I will get back to you on that front if you just need someone to talk to. And there's always plenty of people willing to talk to you out there. So keep that in mind going forward. I've seen it, destroy a lot of people, and some people that aren't with us anymore in my life. So if you are having a problem, please reach out and talk to someone and get that straightened out. You're not soft by any means. You're dealing with an illness. If you had any other sort of illness, you would go to a doctor. This should be no different. More injuries. Yeah, more injuries on the NFL front. Deshaun Jackson is asking for a trade. He's not currently playing with the Rams. I think he would fit in great with the Buffalo Bills, by the way. I think that is the one spot on their offense that they are really missing right now. They tend to use Emmanuel Sanders down the field a lot, but he's not the same sort of speed threat. They were hoping Gabriel Davis could be that guy, but I don't know if that's really going to be the case. Like, you don't need Deshaun. Deshaun Jackson was just rendered obsolete by Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson is just a better version of Deshaun Jackson at this point. But you don't need Deshaun Jackson on the field 100% of the time. Just stick him on the outside periodically to run nines down the field. We know Josh Allen can hit him. It just creates a new dimension to that offense that I feel like that's their last missing piece, besides, like a great running back that they're missing, or at least a consistent running back that they can rely on to get yardage. Corey Davis missed week 8. No word on him for Thursday Night Football. Julio, Lord knows how long he's going to be out. Donovan Peoples-Jones missed week 8. Will Fuller could be back for week 9 against Houston. Revenge game for Will Fuller. I have Michael Gallup on here twice. I thought he was likely to play off the IR. He was not likely to play off the IR. He was deemed inactive very late into Sunday. Diami Brown missed week 8. Michael Thomas could be back this week. Probably not back this week. Or they're not one of the teams on bye, are they? Let's see. Bye week. No, they're not. Seattle, Tampa, Washington, Detroit, all on bye weeks this time around. Let's see. Antonio Brown missed week 8. Tampa is on bye, so maybe he'll be back for week 10. He's still on crutches, though. Terrace Marshall hasn't played in ages with this concussion. Curtis Samuel is not playing for the Footballs. Sammy Watkins could be back. He missed week 7. He went on bye. He's coming back out like a lot of these Ravens guys. So for the wide receiver position, again, DK Nation in the description. I'll update these when stuff changes. Kadarius Toney, Hunter Renfrow, Rashad Bateman, Devontae Parker, and Jamison Crowder. Devontae Parker's name has been bandied about in terms of trade rumors. So again, November 2nd, Tuesday is the trade deadline. He could find himself in a better spot come Tuesday afternoon. We'll see. Either way, it was his best game of the season against the Bills. They get the Texans this week. The Dolphins' schedule isn't overly difficult. They still get the Jets twice, and no matter what Cuss says, the Jets still aren't all that great. So Devontae Parker, it'll be curious to see what happens when Will Fuller comes back, how everything is split up in that offense. Because when Parker and Fuller were out, Gesicki, Waddle, that's where all of the offense was going through the air. But I do think that Parker's skill set is good enough that no matter where he lands, he should be all right. Like I said, Allen Robinson is another one just to hold on to. If you have Robbie Anderson, you just drop it. Robbie Anderson, the guy is absolute trash at this point. He's going to have one huge game. It's going to suck people back in, and they're going to forget about the 8 games in a row he scored fewer than like 3 fantasy points. But that's just the way that we go about this. Tim Patrick's still looking good. Broncos getting healthier, although they do not have Von Miller anymore. Van Jefferson, he continues to run as many routes as Robert Woods. Robert Woods scored the 2 touchdowns, but Van Jefferson, at least in the passing game, might be the better guy. And Darnell Mooney Tunes is the guy that you want with Justin Fields right now. Justin Fields, I guess just get rid of Matt Nagy. Don't have him around, and Justin Fields looking a lot better. They didn't win, obviously, but Darnell Mooney is looking like the player in that. I don't think that Allen Robinson is long for this team. Now, I do worry that if Allen Robinson leaves, everyone's going to be like, oh, man, Darnell Mooney's so sick. Wide receiver 1. That's internet guy voice. But maybe Allen Robinson is taking away some of the coverage from Darnell Mooney, as we've seen this happen tons of times. It was like a good thing that Randall Cobb was able to score the 2 touchdowns because, he still had 2 touchdowns, had like 16 fantasy points or something like that because he's just not cut out to be a wide receiver 1. We saw it before when Jordy Nelson went down. It's like, oh my God, Randall Cobb's going to be so amazing. I was like, no, he's a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. That's where he is best. I don't know if that's the case with Darnell Mooney, but I would be somewhat hesitant to say like, oh my God, he's a top 25 receiver the rest of the season just because Allen Robinson leaves. I think he is who he is at this point. He doesn't get better. He might actually get worse if Robinson leaves, and the defense can really focus on him because he would be the only member of that receiving game that would strike fear into anyone at this point. It's not the road dog, Jesse James. It's not Cole Kmet, who is the king of 3 for 35, and people being like, man, we should play Cole Kmet this week. It's like, should you? Should you play Cole Kmet? Because he's not very good. It's a problem. I can't believe Hunter Renfrow dropped below the 60% barrier either. That just kind of blew my mind. Rest of the pickups for the week at tight end, I have my guy, Pat Freiermuth, or Firemouth, as I enjoy to call him, at number 1. Scored a touchdown, 4 for 44. Looking good. Tarzan Dan Arnold at number 2. Washington is on bye this week. Logan Thomas expected to be activated coming out of that bye. I mean, he's going to be a top 10 tight end. You may as well pick him up. He was dropped in a ton of places. Uzma, Conklin, Ingram, and my guy, Cole Kmet. My guy and your guy, Cole Kmet. Gronk left the game with a back problem. Eric Ebron didn't play. Obviously, the Bucs are on bye. Pharaoh Brown didn't play in Week 8. Jordan Akins went 5 for 53, which is pretty nice. Bob Tunyon, done for the season, more than likely. Dawson Knox, probably out at least another week, could be out up to 3. Darren Waller's really the one to watch here, though, only because we don't know how serious this ankle injury is for him at the moment. So Foster Moreau would obviously be the pickup should Darren Waller not play. I think that's pretty easy. If we jump over to let's see here, tight end in the newsletter, I have the tight end routes per drop back and a minimum of 10 routes, the highest percentage. So these are the guys that aren't blocking whatsoever. They're just running routes when they're out on the field, whatever the quarterback drops back. It's Pitts, Gesicki, Ricky Seals-Jones, hence why Logan Thomas should be up there because Ricky Seals-Jones going back to the bench when Logan Thomas comes back. CJ Uzma, TJ Hawkinson were your top 5. So 90% for Pitts, Gesicki, 88%, Ricky Seals-Jones, 84%, Uzma, 84%. They're basically playing receiver. They're not playing tight end. Jared Cook, Gerald Everett, Dalton Schultz, Dan Arnold, and Dallas Goedert from 68 to 72%. The next guy on that list at number 11 is Pat Freiermuth. He was 67% in terms of routes run versus dropbacks. I don't know how that's affected once Eric Ebron does return. I don't know why Eric Ebron needs to return at this point. The other guy, Gentry, who seemed to be doing good enough blocking, so just let that guy block. Let our guy Firemouth go and catch touchdowns, and we're good to go. But 7 targets in back-to-back games now for Freiermuth. I think that he's going to be a fringe top 10 or like a fringe top 8 type tight end the rest of the season. Like if you had to ask me, Noah Fant versus Freiermuth, I'd probably take Freiermuth at this point because Noah Fant, it's just too easy for him to be lost on that team, especially with Judy back, because Patrick is still a going concern. Albert O, Big Al, ends up coming back and doing better than Noah Fant does in this game. They just have too many options. And that's the issue with all the Denver passing game, even in the backfield, whether it is Melvin Gordon or Javonte Williams, that these guys can be lost in the shuffle on any given week. At least with the Steelers, it's 4 guys. It's Najee out of the backfield. It's Deontay Johnson, Claypool, and Freiermuth. That's it. Those are the guys that they're going to. And it's not like their defense is so good they just can run the ball all of the time. They fall behind in these games. They have to pass. Ben, fan of a little dump. And little dumps go to our boy, Pat F. So I can see how this works out really well for him. If you have Fant, trade him straight up for Pat Freiermuth right now. It's a move. Go take it. Those are tight ends. Let's go to, what do we got here? Quarterback streams for the week. Thursday Night Football. You got Carson Wentz against the Jets. They're like 10.5 point favorites, so you should probably peep that one. That one seems pretty good. Tua Tugs playing against Houston. I do think that the Miami defense is better than the Houston defense, but Tyrod could be back in that game. If it is Tyrod, not Davis Mills, although Davis Mills had a really nice fantasy day, all in garbage time, obviously. You could probably pick up one of those guys and play them if you need it. I could see Tyrod getting traded to the Saints with Jameis out for the year. They don't want to roll with Trevor Siemian. Derrick Carr at number 3 against the Giants. He's right on that threshold. In terms of defensive pickups for the week, in terms of streamers, we got the Saints, the Raiders, the Colts, the Cowboys, and Dolphins of teams below 60%. Obviously, all of my rankings out on Tuesday morning on DKNation.com. Then I'll do the show with Jake on Tuesday afternoon, and then you can just see the list of defenses, so you don't even really need to worry about defenses right now. I'll have more information. All like the stats information gets updated after the Monday night game, so I'll have a better grasp on who to really target. I had the Eagles as my big pickup last week. Obviously, they came through. They absolutely dominated, as would kind of line up versus, like, when you look at pass rush versus offensive line, they were the biggest gap of the week. That the Eagles had a top 10 pass rush. They weren't elite, but they were like number 9. And the Lions, especially being so banged up, were like a bottom 5 offensive line. That's just generally how you want to play defenses. It doesn't always work out, but if you have a favored team in a game expected to face a lot of pass attempts behind a bad offensive line, especially with a bad quarterback as well, I mean, that's a recipe to print money at DST. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but it works well over like 60% of the time, especially when we're trying to stream defenses. It's not like you can just go pick up the Rams if you're looking for a cheap DK defense, or if you're looking for a waiver wire pickup that you can use. That's always the best way to go about these things. Before we get into Monday Night Football, I have a tease for Thursday Night Football. So, obviously, I watch the games with Cust every single week, and he is now pretty fired up for the New York Jets, especially for this game against the Indianapolis Colts in primetime on Thursday here. And we'll have more on this on the Wednesday morning spread show. Early link in the newsletter, by the way, when that comes out on Tuesday night. But here's what you can expect from Cust, and probably a bit crazier than even this.
If we win this game, and it's not guaranteed yet, if we win this game, then we're definitely beating the Colts on Thursday. That's a done deal. That's a bye before the mini bye. Then we've got the mini bye before Buffalo. Have you seen the way the Bills have played the last 3 weeks? Decrepit. We're winning that game too. We are going to be on a roll. This is a hinge quarter for the season to set up hinge games against the Colts and the Bills. I'm telling you, everything is coming up Jets here if we can get this win. If we get this win, and I'm not guaranteeing anything. But here we go. Jets!
Does Zoomer Zach get his job back?
Yes, he'll get his job back. But you know what? Mike White is doing a great job right now. You could flip him for a first-round pick to like 6 teams in the NFL right now, the way he's playing. Are you kidding me? Cleveland would give up everything to get someone as good as Mike White as a backup.
Should be a good one, especially because Jeff was at the Chargers' loss against the Patriots as well, so he's going to be real bummed. Tim is going to be super high. It's going to be great, although Jeff will probably be the super high one in real life, but Tim will be acting like he's probably on like speedballs or something like that. Some sort of amphetamine, although he wouldn't actually be doing it, is what Tim will be like when he is going to be talking about the Jets. Let's talk Monday Night Football. Monday Night Football. We have the Giants at the Chiefs. The current spread at DraftKings Sportsbook is now 10.5. As we go through everything, I gave this out as one of my best bets on the Friday show. Is going to be Patrick Mahomes over rushing yards. Let's see where that's at right now anyway. 22.5. That's up from, I think it was 19.5 when I gave it out on the show. I still like the over 22.5. He has hit his rushing prop 6 of the past 7 weeks, so I do like that a lot. Player receptions for this game. And they're being pretty coy here with the Giants receivers. As we'll get to run the Sims here in a minute, that it's going to be kind of tricky to figure out, but I do like Kadarius Toney a ton in this game as long as he can make it through. It looks like he's going to play. Obviously, you want him to be officially active first before you go in on anything. Darrell Williams over 2.5 catches. Darrell Williams over 16 receiving yards. Darrell Williams 58.5 rushing yards. Don't mind those, really. You can run on the Giants. That's never really a problem, and as a 10.5 point favorite, although this did not work out against Tennessee whatsoever. I do like Darrell Williams in that spot. What's Devontae Booker receptions? 17.5 yards through the air is not bad. 2.5 catches. That's juiced to minus 150. I'd probably go down and play the minus 115 and save the 35 cents on the 17.5 receiving yards. You're playing with a bit more fire in that regard. but that's probably the way that we want to go about it. If we go over to prizepicks.com, you can go into prizepicks.com, code MMN at checkout. You can get the link down in the description as well. You have to play at least two players from either of the games, but you don't need to just play it on Monday night. If there's one that you really like, obviously I like the rushing yards for Patrick Mahomes. It's 19.5 here, so it's 3 yards lower. That's one of the great things about Prize Picks. I really capitalized on Cordarrelle Patterson on Sunday morning. Calvin Ridley was ruled inactive. They didn't change the Cordarrelle receiving line at all. They hung it, and he just got over it. So, sometimes it doesn't always win, but I think that it closed at like 47.5 in terms of the sports book, but you could have got it at 33.5 on Prize Picks. We saw this with Pat Freiermuth during the course of the week as well. His Prize Picks over under receiving yards was 23.5. The DraftKings Sportsbook had him at 34.5. So it just seemed like a very easy opportunity to go in there. You should always hit up Prize Picks for this, and of course you can parlay them together because you have to play at least one from two different teams, and then you're good to go in this circumstance. But that's why I should always recommend it. So go to prizepicks.com, code MMN gets you $100 deposit match. So deposit $100, get $200. Then you can play in the Mayo Media 7-Eleven contest. More, you can always just check out the details. I've been talking about it for ages, but you get like bonus money, and all you have to do is invest $7.11 for all your Sunday needs. So I think that's a great way to go about it if you're trying to build it. And if sportsbooks aren't legal in your state, there's a chance that Prize Picks is. So you can go do that as well. Prizepicks.com, code MMN. So I like Mahomes over 19.5 rushing yards. Hit over that in 6 of the past 7 games. Bad offensive line is going to force you to run. It makes a lot of sense. If we go to receptions, they're not posting the Giants guys yet. I'd wait for the Giants guys on this because if Tony doesn't play, I love Shepard over everything, obviously. And then if Tony plays, I like him over. They do have receiving yards out. So Tony, you always have to deal with the injury risk, as we saw. I might even go Booker. Booker 16.5 over. If I need something from the Giants, you could look at the Danny Jones rushing yards. Let's go over to runthesims.com. If you want to get access to all the tools at Run the Sims, if you get the monthly right now, the link's down in the description. Let's see here. Booker. And what did we say it was? 15? Was it 16.5 or 15.5? Booker receiving yards is 16.5. So we'll just type in 16.5, switch from rushing yards to receiving yards, and we'll actually call the juice even on either side because this one is on Prize Picks. But what was it at DraftKings Sportsbook? It was only 15.5, and it was -1. No, now it's -120. It's gone up 5 cents since we checked it 2 seconds ago. Great. Missed out on that number, so we'll call that -120. But it's 15.5. We'll set it at 16.5 right now, though, just for the Prize Picks to see how we're doing here. Again, if you go and get the monthly membership at runthesims.com and use code RTS on the monthly, that will get you 25% off all their packages. You put /Mayo at the end of runthesims.com, you get 10% off any package. It does look like the under hits most of the time on 16.5. I have a feeling that might end up going over. That's one where but the median is 16. It's right on the number, so it's like 51 to 48%. If we shrink that down to 15.5, I bet you it tells us the over is not a good bet, but it hits most. Actually, it's right on the number with the median. 51% for the over, 48. So there's not a huge gap there. So that's all going to be a gut play when it comes down to it. I do think I like the over on that. Let's see, receptions for... Darrell Williams, 15.5 receiving yards. It feels like he should get to that number, doesn't it? Let's go with Darrell Williams and see what we got going there. Darrell Williams. What was it again? It was 15.5. Call that. And run the Sims and see what this tells us. Now the median is 17, so 54 to 46%. Not all that close, although if you're paying the VIG on that one, it's only -110. It's -120 for the under of 16.5. 58.5 rushing yards, too, might be another way to potentially go at this game. Let's switch it over to, that's rushing touchdowns, rushing yards, and 58.5 to see where Darrell Williams ends up coming out in this. It's because I still have it at, 58. 58 receiving yards, you probably want to go under on that one. Rushing yards is where I want to go with Darrell Williams on this one. We took the juice out of it. He actually hits the over on 58.5, 64% of the time. So maybe that's another place where you can play it too. If you want to triple up, if you play 3 on prizepicks.com, you end up winning 5 times your money. You win 10 times your money if you take 4 guys. But I'd probably go Tony over. I'd prefer if it was anything like 4.5 receptions, I'd go over receptions before I went over this 50.5 receiving yards. But if he doesn't play, over everything on Sterling Shepard is where I would like the Darrell Williams over 58.5 rushing yards, Mahomes over the 19.5 and 22.5 if you're just betting straight up props. And then I would go the other way on those ones with Kadarius Toney and Sterling Shepard in this game. The Devontae Booker one, I still do like the over, but obviously I've lost some confidence in those picks right now. We'll get to DraftKings picks for Monday Night Football. We can see, let's see here, DK on runthesims.com. Once again, code RTS for the monthly. You get 25% off to go give it a shot. Right now, 10-point spread is what is loaded into the system. All these will get updated after inactives as well. Justin Freeman, who does all of these projections, has won the giant GPPs each of the past 2 Thursdays. So he is just printing money right now, and these are his projections. You can customize the projections any way you want, but if you just want to run the Sims with his, you are good to go in that format. Have it set to DraftKings captain mode right now. What do we think is going to happen in this game? I'm guessing people are betting the over of 52. Let's say we pick the Giants to cover the spread here and it is not an absolute blowout type of game. Let's say it is 23-17 is what we're going to put in the score as. Because I want to adjust these. Obviously, I can't give away the goods of the site. I got to adjust everything for my own purposes here. And we'll just keep the rushing and rushing TD rates. So 64, so we'll go 65 plays for the Chiefs. Actually, I think it's going to be lower than that because they have so much big play potential. We'll put them at 58 plays, and we'll put the Giants in at 61 plays, running shorter plays, but more of them kind of thing. We'll see what we got going on here. Daniel Jones with the 25% market share of the rushes. We're going to bump him down, bump up Booker to 61%, keep our averages at 100% here. You can check those at the bottom. And then, let's see, I'll bump up Devontae Booker in the receiving game to 12%. We'll keep him at 12%. And then we will run, let's see, we got Sterling Shepard at 25, Kadarius Toney. Let's flip those. Let's put Sterling Shepard at 18% and Toney at 25%. And we can still add 2 onto the... All right, increases market share of touchdowns. That's probably what I shouldn't have done. Yeah, because I'm at 101% right now. So yeah, 11% target share for Devontae Booker. You got Elijah Penny at 4%. That seems about right. Darius Slayton and Dante Pettis and John Ross have 11, 6, 5. 2L Colin, he's down at 2%. Evan Ingram at 12%. Evan Ingram sucks, so we could probably just make his touchdown equity like 0%, and we'd probably be more accurate than 12%. But hey, here's where we are right now. I got Kyle Rudolph at 5%. Let's even those out a little bit more. We go 9% for Ingram and 8% for Kyle Rudolph, just to give us a different look here. And we'll drop down John Ross to 1% because if Slayton is playing, chances are that he's going to see a bunch of targets. We'll bump him up to 15% now and see what we're looking. So we've adjusted the running game and the passing game from the Chiefs side. Darrell Williams, 65% of the rushes. Mahomes, 18% of the rushes. That seems about right to me. I'm even going to take away, I don't think Derrick's going to get to 11. We'll drop him down to 5, and we'll bump up Darrell Williams to 70% in terms of the rushing market share. In terms of the target share on this team, I mean, you can really kind of pick or choose. So let's say this is a Byron Pringle game, not a Demarcus Robinson game, or even a Hardman game. So we'll drop Hardman down to 10, and we'll bump Pringle up to 12 from 7. And we'll bump him up to 11. So basically flatten all these guys out. We'll go 10% Hardman, 9% Robinson, and 10% Pringle. That's a way that we can figure it out a little bit. Josh Gordon, 1%. Probably don't want to be playing him too much. Noah Gray at 3%. Travis Kelce at 24%. That's with Tyreek Hill at 25%. But let's say this is one of these games where we can exploit the linebackers. Travis Kelce should be a little bit better in this. We'll bump up Kelce to 29%, Hill down to 20%. And that's what we're going to do. So our 23-17 score. And this is just as an example of the under of what we can do. So we save that. And then we run the Sims. Now, if you think it's going to go over, obviously you just punch in your own score. But let's see what this gives us with my projections. Now that I have everything adjusted, that gives us Mahomes, Daniel Jones, Kadarius Toney, Travis Kelce, Devontae Booker as the top 5, with Kelce, Toney, Jones, and Mahomes being in the optimal lineup over 60% of the time. Those would be the only 4 guys. I guess Kelce's at 59.5%. But that dropping down the target share for Tyreek Hill really bumped him down. Sterling Shepard would go up. Darrell Williams would be higher than him in that spot. So as overall captains, strangely, Kadarius Toney would end up being the best captain in terms of optimal percentage at 20%, with Kelce being 17%, Mahomes at 14%, Daniel Jones at 13%. Other than that, the only other different outliers, Tyreek Hill, because of his big play upside, would be around 5%, Darrell Williams at 6%. And a lot of this is just salary based on DraftKings too. If you use Mahomes or Hill or Daniel Jones or even Kelce for that matter as your captain at 1.5 times their salary, that's going to be a bit trickier than trying to fit in the rest of your roster. You see Slayton and Hardman, because of their big play potential, are down there a little bit more. Apparently Elijah Penny, I guess that's in the circumstance that Devontae Booker gets hurt, then Elijah Penny ends up coming in and becoming the guy in the backfield 1% of the time. Then it would be worth it to take Elijah Penny at $600, or actually be $900 if he was going to be the captain. If you just look at the lineups, this one leaves $100 on the table. It's Byron Pringle as the captain because we bumped him up. Probably don't. If you were going to play 150 lineups, that's probably the way that you would want to do it. This one leaves $800 on the table. It's Toney as the captain, assuming he plays, with Demarcus Robinson, Patrick Mahomes, and Darrell Williams, Sterling Shepard, and Daniel Jones as a 3-3 type split. You could also play the 5-1 Chiefs barrage, including Kansas City's defense in this regard, or you could play the 5-1. Hopefully all the scoring goes through Travis Kelce. I would prefer Darrell Williams in this spot, just based, if you're only going to play like single entry. I'd probably want to do a 4-2 stack with the Giants, and hopefully everything is concentrated for the Kansas City Chiefs in that regard. Let's see where we can find a good one of those. Not seeing a ton in the optimals, and this one has Elijah Penny, which makes it a little bit tougher. Don't love that one, but you can see like 24. I mean, with the projections that I just ran, based on the under and upping Pringle, it would be Pringle as the captain, Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Toney, with Mahomes and Travis Kelce. I don't hate that one, actually. It's going to be tough for Byron Pringle to actually be. I mean, out of 10,000 simulations, this is the optimal lineup 24 times, which is by far the highest because we've upped Byron Pringle's target share in that regard. But it's just a really fun way to look at the games. So that was Monday Night Football on Mayo Media Network right now. Griffin Swanson has his full breakdown of the game in short form video covering both the props and DraftKings plays for the week if you want to get another opinion, and runthesims.com. Use code RTS on the monthly. Get yourself 25% off. Use the optimizer. You just saw me walk through how to do the showdown stuff. If you want to base it on what you think is going to happen in the game, or just any scenario that you can run, and it will spit you out all the optimal lineups that you want. PrizePicks.com, code MMN, to get in on those over-under fantasy props as well, especially if you live in a state that does not have legalized sports betting as of yet. It's time now to get to no longer the life advice, the Ask Me Anything besides actual actionable fantasy or gambling advice on any sport. I want some fun questions that are in here, and I thought this one was great. That's why I decided to mix it up. This one comes from Dominic. It says, "Hey, Pat, I've been listening since 2015. Just want to say, loving all the content this year." Well, thank you. The Friday show, in addition to the Wednesday show, has been awesome. I am glad that there is the subsect of people who like it. I see it reflected in the numbers in terms of like the podcast numbers for this show versus the video numbers are like 6-7 times higher because people enjoy listening to the show audio-wise. The Wednesday show is by far the biggest show I do all year. It's not even close. That gets around like 150,000 downloads every single week. People love the spread show. People will tell me like, man, I hate that Tim Andercust. Oh, I think Jeff's a moron. Hey, it doesn't stop people from tuning into that show specifically. By far my biggest show. But the Friday show with Cam and Pizzola is rising up the ranks. Every single week, the numbers get bigger for that show. So thank you for helping support that show. We have a lot of fun doing it. And it's obviously that entertainment is far more important to people than actionable good information. Why don't all of the teams roster a jockey-sized guy for all of their goal line downs? The offensive lineman can collapse and then just throw him over the defensive lineman. Now, I was just talking this over with some friends, and I'd love your opinion on it. It's not a real football question, so please don't ban me for life. He had me until it said, "Let's go Jets." from Dom. Thank you for sending this in, because it's funny. I have been talking about this with my friends for years. Not this in particular, although you'd kill the poor jockey if you threw him over the offensive line. You got to remember, like, some of these guys on defense are absolute freaks. No matter how high you flung this like 100-pound man up over everyone else, like, these guys have good verts. They might just kill this guy in the air and absolutely break him in half. It's kind of akin to Tim's, I could get 10 yards in the NFL on 3 carries because I'm running behind an offensive line. So this kind of works twofold. Is one, Tim would never make it to the offensive line to be blocked to begin with. He'd be hit once, he'd be out for his life and potentially be dead. So that wouldn't be good for him. And that he just doesn't have the speed to get there. But I always talked about this with LaDainian Tomlinson. And it always seems to be convention, and maybe this is getting worked out of football now, that you always have like the Brandon Jacobs or the Jerome Bettis types. Like, we want a guy who is a bruiser at the goal line, the biggest guy possible. He's going to push people forward. But it always seems strange to me that the best goal line back I've seen in my life, and it's probably the best running back I've seen in my life as well, is LaDainian Tomlinson. So maybe he's an outlier in this regard. But he used to just... He had the ability to just run in, like, when you're smaller and not one of these bigger backs, not saying jockey size, but like, and probably a little bit bigger than Darren Sproles. So like the Tomlinson type of body, like DeAndre Swift's a little, like, he's sort of like on the fringe of someone like that. Like Eckler, I'm not surprised, has been a pretty good goal line back so far this season, despite never being given the opportunity. And he was another one of those guys, like, oh, he's too small to use at the goal line. The smaller guys can find the creases. You only need a yard or 2 yards. You can just kind of wedge yourself in there and pop out the other side. Yeah, you can get hurt a little bit more easily, and it would go against convention of, oh, you know, this guy is so hard to bring down. But I do think that smaller running backs actually do have an advantage on the goal line, especially fast ones as well. Like, they can get to that hole a little bit easier. Maybe you do take the hesitation step and see where the little bit of a crease is and wedge yourself in there. I've always wondered why it's been the conventional wisdom that it has to be a huge running back that has to be your goal line or short down back. Like, frankly, if you're from the half-yard line, you should just quarterback sneak it every single time. It's going to work like 80% of the time. So using the running back in that regard seems kind of crazy anyway, especially when you have like the Jacoby Brissetts of the world or the Bradys of the world who are just good at getting that half yard. It's a skill set that they possess, but it's not just them who possess it. It is that coaches don't rely on that to get the yard. Just do it every single time. I saw it in the London game against Jacksonville. It's a great way, too, especially if you have a specialty guy come in. It has the potential for a big play because it was the first time all season that Brissett faked the quarterback sneak, and they went downfield to Gesicki. It was a horrible throw, and I think Gesicki had to dive to catch it, but like, just the defense was not prepared for that to happen. And that's why I think that the smaller running back on the goal line, maybe it will become like in vogue 4 years from now, but I've just always thought that it was easier for them to maneuver and adjust on the fly too, to a little bit of a crease that opens up. The bigger guys are just above everyone else, and it's hard to jam their bodies into that situation. It's not to say that these little running backs are built like me and can just be like turn sideways and you can no longer see them. Obviously, they're fucking built, but being able to squeeze through and just pop out. Maybe it's more difficult because you can't see the ball, and trying to overturn it to replay becomes a little bit more difficult, but it just feels to me like you can kind of get under everyone else as the bigger offensive linemen are going over. Now, if you just wanted to say, use the 98-pound dude, give him a chuck, I mean, it's probably going to work like once or twice. It'd be really interesting to bring into like a playoff game that no one has ever seen before and just be like, yeah, we're just basically going to shot put you over the end. I don't know if you're allowed to do that, but it would be interesting to see nonetheless. These are the type of questions these are nice theoretical that I can go with right now. And on the cusp, 10 yards, we've been debating this amongst my friends for ages now. And I am always under the impression that even the bet, like, I know a couple good football players, like played college football. That's probably about it. They're now in their mid-30s too. So they're not quite the athletes they once were. But so much of it has to do with speed out of there. It's not like you start at the line of scrimmage and fall forward for yardage. Like, sometimes you're going to be like 5-7 yards behind the quarterback, and you actually have to come in with your timing, get the ball, try not to be hit, look for your hole, and try to go through it. That's how you have to actually use an offensive line, those instincts. And you need to be going at... you don't need to be going at full speed once you have the ball. Now, we would have to be going at full speed to have the ball because we're not making seismic moves to the left and right to be able to get out of people's way, be able to read the line in that way, and have the acceleration to get up to top speed so fast like an NFL running back would be. So you have to think about it in a completely different facet if you're a regular person. Like you'd have to run you'd probably have to start like 10 yards behind the ball, start your sprint knowing when it's going to come, and hopefully you can get back to the line of scrimmage without going to the hospital after being hit. It's impossible. It's not going to happen, no matter if it was a pro offensive line against a CFL defensive line. You're just not that good. No one is out there. Maybe if you played college running back at a high level, and yes, then obviously you could probably step in and do that if you have experience. But random dude out there, not a fucking chance. Anyway, that was the Ask Me Anything besides actionable fantasy and gambling questions for the show. Email in at thepatmayoexperience@gmail.com. Next Monday, me and Meanie, rest of the season rankings. If you have any questions, maybe we'll go live. Maybe not. Who knows? Maybe I'll say we can do an AMA in terms of your fantasy trade questions in the description next week, and we'll try to answer those by Monday evening. Maybe that's the way we can do it. Trade deadline is coming up. You can check out the updated waiver wire up on dknation.com. Additionally, smash the like, sub to the network, and the newsletter, where I continue to update the injuries to that as well as it goes through. You can always check back on it. Link is down in the description. I hope you had a great week 8. We're on to week 9. I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience.